Welcome back to Chapter 2, Lesson 2 of our graphic design class. I hope you have gained some valuable insight from Lesson 1, and I believe that you are excited as I am to start with Lesson 2, the elements of design. After Lesson 2, you should be able to demonstrate deep understanding on the 7 elements of design for you to make use of them to create your graphic design artworks in an effective manner. Today, we will focus on the foundation of good design. We refer to this foundation as the elements as well as the principles of design and how to combine them into a visual unity. For this lesson, we will focus on the building blocks of design or the elements of design. A separate, a separate lesson will follow for the principles of design. The elements of designs are the building blocks of your design, and the principles are how we apply these building blocks. To put it into simple terms, imagine that you are in charge of a large building project. As the project manager, you will need the necessary building material as well as a team of builders and architects to construct your client's dream home. The building material we refer to as the elements of design. The team of people you will be working with we can refer to as the principals when it comes to graphic design. What this means is that the elements are the physical ingredients or building blocks we use to construct our design. The principles refer to how we apply these elements in an effective manner. The end result of successfully applying these elements or the building material and principles or the team is a successful building project, which we refer to as effective visual hierarchy. We will have a separate lesson to discuss visual hierarchy in detail. Visual hierarchy cannot be achieved without the other, meaning the elements and principles of design should work together for a successful graphic design artwork. Just like a building project, materials, which is considered to be the building block, and the team, which are the builders and architects, both are needed to build a successful building project. There are 7 elements of design. We have space, line, shape, size, texture, value, as well as color. In the next lesson, we will focus on how to successfully apply these elements. The principles of design consist out of focal point, contrast, balance, movement, pattern, unity, and the very important theory of Gestalt. Now, what happens if we do not successfully apply our elements and principle of design? You guess it, we have a failed building project. At the end of the day, it does not matter how well you know any of the design programs such as Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign. You must also have a strong foundation for your designs to be effective and convey the correct message. And that's exactly why this lesson is important. Take note, as I have mentioned earlier, the foundation of design are the elements and principle of design. In this lesson, we will learn the role of the 7 elements of design, which you are familiar with by now. Note that these elements might differ from source and you might get more or less depending on the source you consult. But at the end of the day, they all come down to the same foundation. You might want to make a note of these elements and principles as you will apply them to every single design you create from now on. We will discuss all elements in more detail, starting with the very first element, space. As implied, space is the area we use to design. It is resembled by the empty areas on your design, which we refer to as white or negative space. Note that we refer to it as white space since it resembles the white of a page. However, it can be referred to as negative space as it is not always white as shown in this website. So we can see here yellow spaces. Negative spaces are actually the spaces in our design na walang laman. The elements that actually fill your page, like the images here and the text here, are referred to as positive space. Take note that the closer elements like images and text are to each other on a design, the more difficult it is for your viewer to read and understand the message you want to convey. Space helps you to guide your viewer and will make a piece more legible and comfortable to read. Space is thus essential for legibility as well as aesthetics. It thus allows your desire to breathe and provide your viewer with a visual rest. Let's have a look at this website. What can you say? Obviously, space was not properly applied in this design. This website is too busy and cluttered. If I accidentally open this website, I'm sure I will close it straight away. Another example. See how space plays an important role? The first poster is too busy and cluttered. The second poster is the improved version. It allows the reader visual rest. Please take note that putting too much elements in your design does not make you a good designer. Space is not something we should fear, but rather an element that should form part of our design. We can refer to line as the primal element since all other elements consist out of some form of line, except for space, of course. A line can be straight, curved, or broken up, thick or thin, vertical, horizontal, or diagonal. As mentioned, lines are the basic form of all designs, but combining them creates a sophisticated design and the illusion of image. We can even go as far and say that line can also be implied, meaning we do not meaning that we do not necessarily need a physical line to be present. Implied line is the imaginary line that your mind instantly creates by connecting dots or elements together. The best example of this is a dotted line. Even shape, which is our next element, is a line in closed form, as you can see in this picture, meaning we can create a shape using lines. So we have created a face here using lines. Line can also evoke emotions and different meanings. Think about diagonal lines. What comes to mind when viewing this line? I bet not a sense of calmness, but rather a sense of urgency and excitement. Diagonal lines are dynamic and will mostly used to convey emotion, agility, and strength, as shown in this sample website here. A thin horizontal line, as we can see here, can convey a sense of elegance and sophistication. It would probably be used for a more formal approach. Furthermore, lines can be used to draw and illustrate. As we can see here, we have illustrations here, and these illustrations are made up of lines. It can also use to add decorations in the form of texture, like this, patterns, borders, and backgrounds. like this. Lines can also be used to add hierarchy, to direct the eyes of the reader, and give emphasis to certain content of your design. Lines can be used to divide and organize contents of your design. The next element of design is shape. Shape can also be referred to as form. As mentioned earlier, shape can be defined as a closed form of line, because when you draw a line continuously and close it, you will form a shape. We have three kinds of shape. We have organic, inorganic, and abstract. Organic shapes, like the name implies, are natural and usually found in nature. These are shapes that can be drawn freehand. These designs here use organic shapes. Natural or organic shapes represent things and animals found in the natural world, such as leaves, flowers, trees, or man-made things like paint splatter and ink droplets. Use these shapes if your design is related to the environment or ecology. Also, these kind of shapes work great for graphics about the great outdoors like hiking, camping, and the like. Inorganic shapes, on the other hand, are geometric in form and usually man-made and can resemble squares, triangles, and circles. These are shapes that can be drawn using a ruler or compass. These shapes convey more order and structure, like the example that we are seeing in here. Abstract shapes are simplified forms of real objects or representations of everyday objects and people, like designed to indicate male or female restrooms. Think about the stick figure icons at a public restroom. They do not resemble a human body perfectly, but they convey the message perfectly. This is a great example of an abstract shape. To explain further how shapes are applied in design, let me give you some practical examples. We can use shapes to organize and separate contents of our design, as we can see here. So shapes are used to organize and separate the contents of this artwork. Shapes can also be used to add decorations to our design in the form of texture and patterns, as we see here, borders and backgrounds, and so on. Shapes are also used to create symbols such as icons, logos, street signs, and more. Shapes can also be used to create illustrations. We will dig deeper into the meaning of shapes and how to use them creatively in your design on a separate lesson. The next element is size, also known as scale or mass. Size, as you know, is how small or large an item or element is. Size is relative with regards to other elements and the proximity of those elements. When it comes to the elements of design, size is often about a relationship of one item to the others around it. Size is important because it draws attention to larger elements on a page and thus plays a significant role when it comes to creating emphasis as well as hierarchy. The larger an element is, the more it will stand out visually. Therefore, you can use size to define importance, to generate visual interest, attract attention, or guide focus, almost like a storyline, and much more. It also aids in making less important elements on a page to be not emphasized as much. Basically, use a large attractive font to the most important part of your design, or parts of your design that you wish to emphasize. Let's evaluate this business card. The element of design, which is size, is obviously not applied in this example. As end result, hierarchy is not established. To apply the principle of size in this design, just decide which element you want the reader to notice first and make them stand out. High-level items or important parts of your design are usually larger, bolder, or different in some way, as you can see in this improved version. Another example is this poster for the movie Drive. In this poster, the lead character has been scaled up dramatically, drawing attention to him first and the other faces second. This publication design scales up certain statistics, information, and numbers a lot to draw attention to those pieces of data over others. So as you can see here, the statistics are a bit larger than the other text. Moving on, texture refers to the surface quality of a design, which can be smooth, rough, or glossy. Texture does not need to be physical or tactile, but it can be implied or visual too, meaning we are able to create implied texture in two dimensions by making use of the design elements. Implied through illustration, suggesting that it would have texture if it existed in real life. Objects or texture can add tactility, depth, and can add some pretty interesting effects to your design. Objects can appear smooth, rough, hard, or soft depending on the elements at play, as you can see here. So this is a flat design. Applying texture make it more look realistic. Texture is created by simply repeating shapes or lines in a continuous manner to form a texture, as you can see here. Clean, sharp, and sleek graphic designs can be wonderful, but sometimes roughing it up a little with some texture can be even better. Let's have a look at an example that uses a texture in a way that enhances the piece. This beautiful typographic design by Dan Casaro creates a vintage-inspired effect by using texture. Notice that the use of rough texture isn't distracting, but rather nicely enhances the piece as a whole, giving it a more handcrafted, authentically vintage feel. Texture actually allows to keep things relative by creating a sense of depth and making items seem more three-dimensional. Value refers to tones of light and dark and also plays an important role in the element of design. In the same way as when making use of color, we make use of value to place emphasis on certain aspects of our design. If you are making use of value and there is no color present in your artwork, it is important to have a lot of contrast between these shades of gray in order to create emphasis. As you can see in the example, the value of each dog is relative to the other dogs and also to the background they are placed on. The greater the difference in value between the object and its background, the greater the contrast. Value is a very powerful tool when creating the look and feel of a design. For example, if there was no value contrast between the words on this page and the background, you would have difficulty reading what is here. Value contrast can also create interest in artworks. Our eyes tend to be drawn to areas of high contrast. So designers use this to show us what they think is important. A handy tip that I would like to share with you is that when you are designing something, try and visualize what it would look like in grayscale. This logo seems very sophisticated, modern, and classy, but when converted to grayscale, you can immediately see there's almost no value difference between the navy background and the bronze logo. If you can see a lot of contrast when it is done in grayscale, or if the items you wanted to have emphasized do not stand out anymore, reconsider your use of color, especially when it comes to logo design. Simply changing the background gives the logo more contrast. And thus, when converted to grayscale, the value quality is preserved. We are drawn to high contrast and would much rather prefer a design with a lot of contrast. And thus, understanding value is very important. The last element of design is color. Color is one of the most important elements of design because they can evoke certain emotions. Color is one of the design elements that is so vast we will actually spend quite some time on it. It is probably one of the most powerful elements a designer can make use of to convey a message. Thus, understanding it is crucial. I would like to give you some insight on the meanings of color in different cultures by looking at the color white. What does the color white symbolize in your culture? As with most cultures, the color white is a symbol of purity, innocence, goodness, and light. It normally has a positive connotation. But did you know that white resembles mourning in the Chinese culture? It is associated with death and can be seen quite a lot of Chinese funerals. Do you know and understand the symbolic meaning of colors in your culture? We will have a separate lesson in color psychology for you to understand further the meaning of colors. Good design should work in the absence of color and should enhance the features of the design. It should not simply be used as the design itself. On the point of enhancing, can you see how the Apple logo still retains its shape or form even with the absence of color as well as value? Whether you are colorblind or not, you should still be able to identify this as the Apple logo. This is what makes logo design successful. Although color is incredibly important in the best designs, do not rely solely on color to make an impact. A successful design should work well in black and white to begin with, and this is where value comes into play. Let's take the example of a couple of logos from Logopan. The first logo here looks good in color, but the effect partially disappears in black and white and the logo looks weak. This second logo, while maybe not looking quite as vibrant in grayscale as in color, still holds up well. You could argue that perhaps the first logo was designed to only be used on a website, and if that's the case, fine. But you should always think and experiment with how your design might look like in just one color. Does the design fall apart if it appears in newspaper or fax? Color also aids creating contrast, and certain colors can complement each other very well, while other colors don't look good together at all. If the use of color exhausts you and you really need to focus to read or view the image, don't use that combination. Color has the ability to group and organize elements together, as you can see here. It creates impact and also evokes emotion. But in order to achieve all this, you will need to understand the color theory. We will look at the color wheel and how to combine colors on a separate lesson. Let's look at the two branding examples and evaluate how colors create specific mood and emotion. First, we have a design by Smack Bang Designs for Women's Skin Rejuvenation Service. This design has opted for light, soft, and pastel colors. Whites, light grays, soft blush tones, and a copper gold foiling. These chosen colors complement each other gently to create a calm elegant, and feminine design. On the other hand, we have this branding for juice brand Fruity. Unlike the previous example, which chose a palette that gently complemented itself, this branding has chosen a color palette that sharply contrasts, creating a much more vibrant, energetic, and playful design. Let's go back to our examples in Lesson 1 and see how the elements of design are being applied. Can you identify any of the design elements I have just introduced to you? Yes, we have space, line, shape, size, texture, color, and color. How about in this billboard design? Obviously, we have space, line, shape, size, that's a big burger, texture on the actual photograph of the burger, you can see texture, value, as well as colors. The layout of the magazine uses space, line, shape, size, texture, value, as well as color. Let's have a look on this another example. I would like you to look at the wording and provide me with a number. On a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is poor and 5 is excellent, how memorable do you think the wording is? It serves its purpose right. It communicates a message. But is there a way we can make this more interesting? I'm sure that this does not captivate you at the moment. Why not add some elements in order to make this more appealing? I will start off by simply breaking the sentence apart. The element that comes to play here is space. It immediately creates the illusion of reading less. Space also has the power to enhance certain elements. By adding more element, we can make it more interesting. What about size? Size helps to create emphasis, and by changing the text size, you immediately know where to look first. Why not add line? Line has the power to immediately round it off. By adding a simple line, the text looks more interesting and might grab your attention even more. We can even change the appearance of the line to make it even more interesting, as line does not have to be straight always, but it can be wavy and even broken up. Let's add some color. Color is another great tool to help create emphasis, but also to determine mood. We can continue to add the design elements until we get the desired effect. The more you practice, the better you will get at it. I have now successfully applied a multitude of design elements to create an interesting yet effective design. Again, on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is poor and 5 is excellent, how memorable is this wording now? Did you notice that by just using basic elements as well as typography, we made this piece of text a lot more interesting? Comparing our final result to the original one makes you not only realize the importance of the elements of design, but also makes you look at typography in a whole new way. Graphic design does not only use typography or text to convey a message, but we see it as an element as well, something we can make more interesting to look at. The elements of design might seem quite simple to you, but the process of applying them is what makes a professional designer stand out from an amateur. Congratulations on completing Lesson 1 or Lesson 2. Please feel free to give your feedback and any suggestion for me to improve my instruction. If you have questions regarding the lesson, please feel free to email me or contact me via Messenger. Please take note that this lesson was based and compiled from the following sites. Thank you for staying with me. For our next lesson, we will learn the principles of design. See you at the next video.